So let's jump in with a couple of memorable stories from studio or road performances. Chuck, let's go over to you. Let's talk about something memorable in your past that you can share.
I'm very blessed. There's too many. It's hard to narrow it down. I've been lucky to work with a whole lot of different artists. Not as many as Eddie, of course, but I've been lucky to work with a good many artists with different genres. But I don't know whether one memorable one was many years ago. I was drumming with Lee Greenwood, and it's kind of his height of popularity back in the early 90s. And we played the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, looking out over the reflecting pool and all that. And it was like the Forrest Gump scene, it just people everywhere. That was a pretty cool one. Or getting to maybe do arena tours with Dolly, or this is going to be a name drop fest here, but just playing Royal Albert Hall with Richard Marx. I've just been lucky to get to work with a whole lot of different people in the studio as well, but
name dropping, I think, is what everybody wants to hear. Thank you for that. Over here, Chuck.
So I signed with Pearl back when I lived in Memphis in the, late 80s, early 90s. Moved to town, was working in Opryland. Opryland ends. I'm like, what am I going to do now? Called up Pearl. I said, hey, can I come over there? They're like, yeah, of course. And I've been in and out of this situation for years now. And it's amazing because it is just a big old family. Products is amazing. Everybody working here is amazing. And for us living in Nashville, it's just a blessing. I mean, you have the drum company in your backyard. That you can't beat.
And I was just going to say, like, when I was in high school, there was this... the metaphor would be a girl, but it was a drum, and it started with an L, and it was made in Monroe, North Carolina. And that's what we all had. That's what we had in marching bands. That was the thing. And I was really in love with this girl, and my aunt worked at the factory for this girl. She really did. She made drums for the L company, and that is kind of where I thought, being it was my hometown, that's where I would end up. But I'm really glad I married up into the Pearl family. So thank you guys for having me.
If I can tell anyone, you know what? When you start out on whatever path you're going to be on, this company will grow with you as long as you're willing to give them the opportunity.
Yeah.
Don't show up with an ego thinking you're everything. You got to grow with the company. And I'm proof of that, man. You stay with someone, they will support you all along the way. So that's a special spot in my heart, man. From the jump.
All right, Keio, we're coming to you next.
Oh, boy.
We joke about this, but if you're going to call yourself a professional drummer in Nashville, you have to have at least saddled up at the bar next to Keio and had a couple cocktails before you call yourself a drummer. But staying on this growing with the times, Keio, as a professional drummer, maybe a professional drinker, as you...
That's a wrap.
You've been here, over about 20 years, I think. How has that music scene changed for you specifically?
It's really interesting. I guess this is now 24 years, which is really weird because I'm only 24 years old.
Yes.
But it's changed because, one, I moved here before there was social media, as most of us have, And so you actually had to leave your house to meet someone because no one could just stalk you on Instagram or MySpace or Twitter. In those days, you actually had to go and stand outside of Eddie Bear's house and stalking. I never did that. That was a big thing, and it was a very, very social time when I first moved to town, and now it's a little less social because now we do have, social media, so we don't see each other as much in person, but we still seem to keep up with each other. But yeah, for me, still meeting people in person is big. Because you then develop relationships, and everything is based off relationships in the music business. Because once you get your hands to a certain point, then it's about how you can hang with your hands. You know what I mean? How you can do certain things. Can you be in a room with a bunch of people? Do you have to be by yourself, and then knowing your lane. Like if you are a person who can't be around people, but you want to be in the music business, then having a home studio is what you should be doing right now. And, if you're a person who likes people and you don't mind being in a van or being on a bus, then touring could be your thing. So I feel, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that through the years I've seen where there were opportunities where people who were not social couldn't be in the music business, and now they can. And people who were too social sometimes couldn't be in the music business, and now they can also. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, staying on that with, now being social or not being social, it's a fairly competitive scene, I would say. And you guys have carved out your own niche and your own spot here in Music City.
I was going to say, speaking to the community thing, I've known Keio's always gone. But this cat here, I got to tell real quick, I think a lot of it is paying it forward. Us being, a lot of us in here, not saying that we're old, but we've done this a long time. And I think paying it forward and being good to people goes a long way, because I learned a long time ago. I met this cat, how long ago? 20.
It was 19, I want to say 99.
He's playing, so I'm some young kid from Kentucky. And my dad is stage managing this gig, and he's playing with Shane Minor at the time.
Yes.
If everybody remembers.
Y'all better remember him.
So I'm Germing this guy so bad. Oh man, what kind of drums are those? Of course, they were Pearl. That's a Pearl record. And I was like, oh my gosh, what did he play? Oh my gosh, how do you do this? And he was so kind and went out of his way to not make me feel like I was putting him out by any way, shape, or form. And that's what I try to do to other up-and-coming drummers now. It's like I learned from that, and you pay it forward to everyone, because you're to me, most of these guys in this room were celebrities to me, because I was a new guy and I looked up to all this stuff. So they say sometimes don't meet the guys or meet your heroes that you look up to, but in most drummers' case, I can say 98%, if you're good to people, it comes around. Like I'll run into some kid who is now 23. Oh yeah, you gave me a stick back when I was, 8 years old, and man, that meant the world to me. And now I play drums. It's like you never know the impact you're going to make on somebody. So
true.
All these new guys coming in, just be good to people, pay it forward. Attitude is gratitude, like you were saying. It's just, at the end of the day, we get to play drums and make a living doing it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Don't
come work the drums.
Yeah, this is not work. You get paid to travel and all that stuff.
You play for free.
Yeah,
right,
free.
exactly.
Anyway, pay it forward. I'll never forget what some of these guys have done for me in this room, and just I like to pay that forward. So
But that starts with, I'll say this, that starts with Eddie, and that starts with Larrie.
Yeah.
Before Eddie, and it starts with Buddy. Knowing history in Nashville is
yes,
to me is very important. I am not a historian by any means, but I do fancy myself one, and also a lawyer, but I'm not that either. But the blueprint that those guys lay down for us, it's hard to screw it up, man. And the only way to screw it up is by being not cool. The fact that Eddie posted his address in Modern Drummer, and you could send a demo to him, and he let you know if you were up to par or not. Hearing the stories from Eddie about working with Larrie, and Larrie showing up, like that shows you that. I guess I should say thank you, for being awesome, and even to me, like now, I've known you for 20-something years, and we've done some fun stuff together and laughed a lot. But that's encouraging to all of us. And so it's cool that you guys did that for us, and now it's up to us to keep that going. That's, to keep just being cool, be nice.
So now you're talking about some of the early days, going back to stories with Uncle Eddie. Give us some of those, your first year or two in Music City, and what was your big break, or how did you start? And give us some stories about those days. Yes.
It was Larrie. When I came in, I was a keyboard player. And as any of us on the initial part of getting in and wanting to get into making a living, pay a bill, buy a color TV, it's like that. So I auditioned down at the Carousel Club. And there were other keyboard players. And I was sitting down and waiting for my turn to get up. So I got up and I played. And this incredible man comes over and he goes, "You're my guy." And it was Larrie. And I really didn't know a lot about Larrie at that time, but of course, since then, from all that time, it was a mentor, And so as the year went on, of course, just sitting and watching him, I was just so inspired and blown away at this guy, and learning more about him too, and the diversity that he brought in.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, I want to. I mean, I did play drums. Some of us all frequent different instruments, but at that time, keyboard was mine. I said, I want to get back in to being professional in drums. And he said, well, I can, we have a little practice pad. I'm off over here and I'll show you some stuff, which he did. And after about a year, I got an opportunity to do in a top 40 band. And from that, that's where Larrie brought me into Pearl. And actually, I mentioned it that he gave me 6.5 maple that now is in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Maybe I have to get that back. But anyway, he just mentored me all the way. And from that, like everyone says, when I got into the production company, they would frequent a lot of the musicians that were working, either the demos or the records. And it was a chance to be able to showcase yourself, and somebody coming and going, man, I really like what you do. I'd like you to play on such and such. And then from that, it just spread, where the different artists and songwriters were the ones who really brought me in to being able to get into the place of being known. Because at that point in time, a producer might hear a demo and go, who's playing on that? Mm-hmm. And so that spread out. And then from that point, I met, I remember on Ray Van Hoy's album, he wanted to use Lee Sklar, and he brought him in, and we connected the same way as it was with Hungate and Joe Osborne. And it just went from there, one great thing after another, an opportunity after another, being fortunate. Nothing that any of us couldn't do, but it was just a blessing and fortunate to be able to, when Sklar said, hey, Mike Post is going to be doing this album for Dolly Parton called 9 to 5. And he said, I want to recommend you, to do it. So it was just like we said with networking, without having that and that camaraderie with people.
That's a funky track, by the way. That's a funky track.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so a lot of that just spread out. And then I realized the diversity of all of us, depending on whatever is put on our plate, all of us are capable of doing that. It didn't matter whether it was a Randy Travis, it didn't matter whether it was, Def Leppard or Martin Knopfler or George Strait or, Blake Shelton's and Luke and all that. We're all capable of doing that because of our diversity. But the great thing is there's not one of us in the room that can't fit into that chair and give it authenticity and soul, because it's about a groove.
And you mentioned Larrie, and for those watching that don't know who Larrie is, you have to seek and search out Larrie London. And you want to talk about pocket and groove. No one better epitomizes that than Larrie London. And I remember when I first moved here and I was introduced to Larrie, and just watching him play, it is something else. I mean, there's nobody else like at that time. Certainly Larrie London was the guy. I remember you couldn't even step on his bass drum pedal.
No.
You had to get a jump start to get on the bass drum pedal to get that beater.
During my year before I made my transition, probably about maybe 8 months into, he would still go out and frequent Chet Atkins or Whalum or somebody like that on the road. And he finally told the owner of the carousel, he goes, Eddie already knows the show, and we're just a quartet. He already knows that, he can play. And I'm going, yeah. I can do it. So I'm just excited. I get there probably about 5 o'clock before the gig starts, and I'm sitting behind his drums, and it was the same thing. I pushed on the pedal, I went. And when I stood up, it went boom like that. I went, I am in trouble. I took the pedal off to see, obviously, maybe he could loosen it up. No. He had a guy named Tommy Winkler create this pedal for him. So I was feverishly going up and down Turner's Alley for any drum. Do you have an extra pedal for a human being? Luckily, I found one.